You're listening to the iRacers Lounge podcast, where we discuss everything iRacing in a casual setting. Enjoy. Hello, and welcome to the iRacers Lounge podcast. Although we usually discuss all things iRacing in a casual setting, today we regretfully start in a somber setting as we dedicate this episode to the memory of former guest Gary Corbett.
Yeah, I actually can't specifically remember if we found out last night or this morning. I think it was this morning, actually. Tony told us, I believe, on the chat. We all thought he was out of the woods, and apparently he wasn't. I didn't really get to know the guy personally. I got to listen to the interview and I think race with him one time, but I know a lot of people that know him, so I definitely feel a little bit of empathy for all of them, and it's a shocking, sad story to hear. The guy was a great guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Rest in peace, Gary Corbett. We're sorry to hear about this. It also ends up being today is his birthday of all days, and so it's a little bit bittersweet. Saw some messages on Facebook about it, his family posting onto his wall about the situation. So, of course, our prayers with everybody involved. We've been talking about Gary the last few weeks, trying to raise money for that family. Of course, I do believe that GoFundMe is still back open, and so go find that link and help them out, guys.
Brian, you're on the Discord, so you've probably seen a lot more of the conversation from a lot of the OBRL guys, right?
Yes, I have. Everybody's been chiming in, wishing in their best regards to his family. Everybody's no one ever had a bad word to say about Gary. He was just that kind of guy that you just never, no one ever had a bad thing to say about Gary, and that's because he was just a great guy. He'd been with the OBRL for quite a few years. All the guys in there, they're thinking about retiring his number, the 88, that we all know is from the keys on the keyboard, from his Aftermath appearance, which I think the Aftermath guys are going to repost that, so you can listen to Gary's appearance on that show again. So yeah, everyone's just so shocked. I mean, even though we knew he was sick, the last words that we heard was that he was actually looked like he might have taken a turn for the better. But so it kind of shocked me when I heard this today. So it's just terrible news. He's just going to be missed by everybody in the OBRL and everywhere else. Those kind of guys aren't their kindness is not limited to racing, obviously. So I'm sure his whole family, we wish them all the best. And everyone he knew, I'm sure, has nothing but great things to say. And we're all going to miss Gary.
Next week is an off week, I believe, for NIS, so we're pretty sure that the OBRL guys are gonna throw together some kind of memorial race. We'll let you know next Thursday what we know at that time. So we'll put a little moment of silence in here, and then we'll have to get back down to business. Rest in peace, Gary.
GridFinder 2.0 is bigger and better than ever, with more ways to narrow your search for the next sim racing league. Featuring over 1,000 leagues from over 25 racing sims across every platform, your place on the grid is just a couple clicks away. Visit www.grid-finder.com to find a league or to upload your own. GridFinder is the home of online sim racing leagues. And we got something big in store coming up. We're going to announce it next week. You guys tune in. iRacers Lounge and GridFinder, we're going to have some fun with the listeners. So, and you guys are going to win cool stuff.
It's topics time, and we're going to start with the top 10 highlights. iRacing dropped the top 10 highlight for the month of June on their YouTube channel. They haven't come out with a not top 10 yet, but have you guys checked this video out yet?
It's great. The usual stuff where, lots of good racing, lots of great highlights, side by side, the normal stuff. But some neat combinations like, the Pro 2 trucks at Watkins Glen. And what's neat about the racing with those is they're literally leaning on each other. And, one guy gets squirrely and he turns into the guy's quarter panel. And normally in most cars that would spin both of them out, but not with all the grip that these things have. They just keep on going, and fabulous racing.
Yeah, this was a pretty exciting video to watch. A lot of close racing.
Brian, I know you like these videos. I mean, which one was your favorite?
There was a really good one with the Legends cars. I think it was number 2, where they finished the race up Daytona, where they were 4 wide at the finish. They all crashed after they crossed the line. It was an amazing finish. Those cars are, they're not easy to drive, even in restrictor plate tracks. But those guys, they went 4 wide, man, for the finish. It was a fantastic finish.
That was a pretty insane finish, and with the radicals at Nürburgring, with the guy actually passing in grass, man. That was and the guy that won, he had to have won, because I would not be that happy and giggly if all that had happened and I had lost.
Well, they were 3 wide against the wall, and the guy was like banging against the wall, but it worked because they were 3 wide, and it was only 3 wide, from wall to wall. So there was no room to spin out.
Yeah, I think it's really cool when they have these top 10 videos and it's from a streamer, because you get so much more personal interaction with the guys who are in this just amazing moments. So yeah, I really like when they have the streamers involved with that, and that was the number 1 video. It was quite cool to watch.
Well, they can definitely be choosy with which videos they put in there, because they have to. I'm sure they get hundreds of videos. But what else do they get to be choosy with now, Brian?
Yeah, this was an article that came out in Racer.com. It's like an online motorsports racing magazine. And it was really cool. It described how successful iRacing business model has become. Because they basically reinvented how the model for these simulations or games, if you want to call it a game, it reinvented how they're done. Because before, software companies, they would just pay these huge, large sums of money up front for licensing fees. So you want a NASCAR game, you pay a whole ton of money for NASCAR, and you got their game, stuff like that. Well, iRacing became they reinvented how that was done by basically marketing their sim to the manufacturers, as Steve Myers describes. He's like, we're marketing this simulation to you guys, so you will let your manufacturers, let your products be available to our racers. And our racers are he called them super users. They're like diehard iRacing fans. And so in the beginning, Steve Myers and the group at iRacing, they basically had just plead their case to companies to let us use your cars, let us use your series, let us use this stuff, and it's going to be beneficial to you in the long run. Well, he was basically begging them in the beginning, but as iRacing grew and became more popular and became more successful, now the tables turned. Now manufacturers are coming to iRacing and saying, "Hey, we want to be a part of this now." So whereas before in the beginning, Steve Myers was begging people to join iRacing. Now so many people are asking him that he has to turn people away. He gets requests all the time that, "Hey, we want to be part of this. We want to be a part of this." And so iRacing can pick and choose now what manufacturers, what series they want to add to the game. So it's really just completely flipped the script on how the marketing of these games has developed, and it just goes to show you how successful iRacing has become.
Except for European endurance racing.
Well, I got a couple things. So first, I mean, yeah, that's how it's always been in the past, where they would spend a ton of money and get the license. But I want to point out, I think that's still happening. I mean, we'll talk about that later in the show with some other games that are coming to motorsport. But that business model is still out there, and it's still being used. But this is a fascinating article. I'm going to read a quote here from Steve Myers from the article. It says, quote, "Where it used to be a hard sell back in 2004 through 2010, every year since 2010 it's become easier and easier, to the point where over the last few years, I probably get 50 inquiries a week from manufacturers, race teams, or racetracks about wanting to be included in iRacing. It's now more of a point where I'm saying no to people, as opposed to me reaching out and saying, hey, do you want to do this?"
Well, that kind of like David, even with David saying like European sports not wanting to be in it as well, like we have them and someone else has taken them, but there's no saying that they could down the road come back. Like, with there's going to be one of those things that's probably going to be jumping around all the time. Like NASCAR seems like they're happy with iRacing and how much they use it for what their content is, but not all. There's how many different types of motorsports around the world. iRacing, if they're turning away that many, I mean, you only need a certain percentage to please the people we have, because we only have a certain amount of percentage of sim racers, right? So I think being choosy helps them not oversaturate the content.
Yeah, we don't want to dilute to the point of, there's 1,000 different races to race, and there's one person in every room, right? And there's nobody to race.
We used to have that problem when there was only David, what did you say the other day? We had we were talking about how many people were on the sim at one time. Like you'd have like 1,000. Some nights you only have like 1,000 people back then, and if you have like 50 or 60 different events going on at nighttime, if you got to split that over 1,000 people, it's not very many people in the event. But if you got like 10,000, 11,000 now, it's a lot better content.
I don't remember the numbers. The first time I first signed up for iRacing about 10 years ago, when I was still doing a lot of R Factor. It was a whole different world back then. I think it was even before the COT came out, I think, or it was right around when the COT came out, and they put it out. And they only had the one model in the A car, and you had to spend a whole season, climbing up through each class before you could get promoted. But I don't remember much about the numbers. It's definitely not as explosive as it is now. You look at the site right now. There's 7,000 people on a Wednesday night.
Yeah, it's really ballooned up since 2020 and everything that's happened there. I think it's great. It's awesome that iRacing is in a position where they're turning away business just because of resources and whatnot. But and having the option to pick and choose and really build that business model out as they envisioned a decade ago, and at this point in 2021. It's hitting on all cylinders. It's growing. It's not. There's a lot of popularity around it. A lot of people know about it now. It's a lot more mainstream.
So, Greg, how did iRacing get a picture of your wife being mad about you being on the sim?
I honestly don't think it's my wife, because my wife wants nothing to do with iRacing, and she wouldn't stare there. She couldn't be bothered to stare there and look at me while I'm racing, because nobody wants to even do that. But I guess I'm not sure who. I'm trying to find the name of who posted this here, but it's in the Reddit. But I guess at Summit Point on the backstretch, there's just this lady. There's a whole grandstand of people, and the lady standing off to the side. And I think, Mike, you said they're all looking at her, from what you were saying there in the chat. But I haven't raced Summit Point much, so I don't reckon I know this. But it kind of is weird to have her off on her own. Have we figured if there's a reason for it yet?
No, but it's interesting because she's looking one way, and then the crowd in the grandstand, they're all looking a totally different direction, which happens to be right at her. And so it just looks like, she's doing a performance or something and kind of standing and everybody's watching. I don't know, but somebody put in Reddit this post or a picture of this and just put, she's just standing there, you know. So I thought it was funny. Something else that was funny is iRacing put up on the Instagram a video of Jimmy Mullis. It was this week's Coke race winner. He launched it through the trees after going off track at the Monza Oval, but still wins the race. And man, the air that they show just on the screenshot of the video, I mean, he's a good, 12, 15 feet off the ground, and yeah, he's going to win this race. How about that?
When did they add Monza to the rally car racing?
It's not rally car, it's Cup next gen.
But it has a jump in it.
That's an awesome jump, and the trees kept him in.
It's built in. It's he went off track.
It was a joke.
But it was a nice landing. He stuck it, and everybody else had wrecked behind him. So he limps it on home to the checkered flag and takes the win. Kind of a nice video.
Pretty crazy. We have a new racing series to introduce. It's called the iRacer Roval Racing Series, and I don't know why we don't have Greg talking about this one, so he'll probably have plenty to say about it. It's a fun, challenging multi-class series that takes place over 7 weeks using the Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series. That actually is pretty interesting. The vehicles that it's going to be running underutilized Rovals on the iRacing service, and the qualifying weekend starts on Saturday. The races are going to include the Charlotte Roval, the Texas Legacy Road Course Combined, Indianapolis Road Course, Pocono International Legacy, New Hampshire, the road course with the North Oval. Is that the one that goes on the outside?
I think so.
Auto Club, the competition, and Homestead Road Course B.
So let me get this straight. So Greg begged for this on the show.
It was like 2 minutes later.
For NASCAR, that's multi-class. And then like hours later, iRacer announces this.
You better sign up for this.
Yeah. We'll do that. I'll have to do it after the show or while we're doing the show here.
Of course, it'll be going the same time we're working on Spa.
That's okay. You can work around me.
Yeah, this starts Saturday for the qualifying. So
that's something that would be listeners might be interested in knowing. If you're on a team that runs a 24-hour race, you can register for the 24-hour race, run your stint, withdraw as a driver, go run a league race or go run an official race, finish it, come back and re-sign up for the 24-hour race. I've had a team member do it before.
Well, it looks like I can't even register for it. It's over.
It started.
Yeah.
This was posted. We had our show Thursday. They posted this, I think, Friday, and it started Saturday.
You missed it. My bad.
Even with a weekly show, we can't keep up with stuff.
Well,
what you guys...
Hold on. Sorry, Brian. If you're going to announce an event, don't announce it the Friday night before it either. But then again, we might have missed it up to that point.
Well, what you guys want to miss is the 4 hours of Charlotte that's benefiting the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. I think we talked about it last week, but this is just a reminder to check out the 4 hours of Charlotte charity race. It benefits the National MS Society, which will be taking place on July 30th and 31st. So you can visit their website to donate and register for this event. If I remember, it's a team event, right? Wasn't this the one with some pretty famous guys in it? Was TJ Majors was in it?
It was Chad Canals with somebody else.
Yeah. So get yourself teamed together. Go to the website and sign up for this race. It's good for a great charity, and sounds like it'll be a lot of fun too.
So, Greg, you've been hunting for a lot of these different guides and guides to the different type of cars, right? And we have one here where you're going to talk about.
Yeah, so it's titled 30-minute late model guide. So it's a Google Drive doc that someone's put together to go over the whole car and I guess figuring out what you can change and to the betterment of to get some people acclimated with setting up these cars, because that's one thing that is very lacking. There's a lot of information out there, but there's not a lot of a lot of people don't want to give away their secrets and things like that. And I'm not sure in this if there's a lot of secrets in here, but at least it gives you pretty much a lot of what you should do, the do's and don'ts with setting this stuff up. And it's very intuitive guide. It's about 8 pages long, but it talks about everything in the setup for the late model. It's definitely great to have something like this put together. We should have this for almost every car and on the service as its own, but it's really hard to come by all this stuff if people try and hide their secrets for some of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great resource. Somebody took a lot of time to type this up, and I went through it. I didn't read the entire thing. I kind of did an overview. I mean, he puts a lot of good information in there about how to do setups, what order, what to do in what order, that kind of thing. He also mentioned at the end the iRacing setup viewer. I think we've talked about this before, but it's a helpful tool that helps you see the exact differences between groups of setups. And you can find it for free at mysimracingapps.ratbrat.net.
I've also been using that stint analyzer that we talked about a few weeks ago, because it really helps with seeing exactly how my 20 and 30 lap averages are doing when we're trying out different sets or even just trying out different changes. And it has the same option. You can actually compare 2 sets and see exactly what's different between one change and another.
Yeah, like we were talking over Messenger, and you posted the pictures of it, and we was able to look at some of the data on it before a race and just see if there was some changes or something we could see that was causing some problems. But Mike, is it Christopher Kimry who actually that is actually the author of this, or is he just the one that posted it? Do you know?
No, I think he's the author as well, and he used to post setups directly for the community, and so this year he's not doing that. This is what he's doing instead. He's just giving up everything he knows. It has some great stuff. For example, I found this section in the middle about stagger, and he said, when I started, I've used stagger adjustments to help with entry-exit feel. At some point, someone pointed me in the direction of the iRacing stagger chart posted over at OS Racing. The link is here. And he points to a link that has a staggered chart, which, I had no idea there was even such a thing.
The other thing is...
I click on it, and there's a list of tracks, and it literally tells the amounts for what kind of cars to set it at.
It's good, helpful hints.
Super late, you run 1.7 at Bristol.
And see, the community only gets stronger if guys are willing to discuss things like this too, right? Like if you said he was doing setups as he was giving away setups, but it's better to teach the community how to be better at racing with making setups than it is to just give it to them for free sometimes or paid, right?
What is the saying? Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime, right?
You got old guys like me that are never going to learn it, though.
So if
I don't apply myself.
You have to practice it first.
If me building a setup was equivalent to fishing, I would starve.
Right. Next up, a great article over at Traxion.gg. We're loving some of the stuff they put out, but it's a really good retrospective of what could have been with the NASCAR Pro Invitational iRacing series. And it's by one of my favorite Twitter followers, Justin Melillo. I follow all his stuff. He talks eNASCAR a lot, but he's got a great feature article about this. We're on the same wavelength here about how things went, why things went south, and how it could have been better. We've already talked about all these points on the show in previous weeks, and Justin, is saying them in his own way, basically, about how it went. What went well. He has a section about that. And then what went wrong, and he basically details out, kind of the things that we talked about. Doesn't, as far as why it ended, or what could have been, it was kind of the same speculation we had. It was, it ended up being a chore for the drivers. They have a lot of stuff going on at the racetrack now that they might not have had last year compared to this year. So, and NBC decided, not to proceed.
The only way you're going to ever convince these guys to do this, I mean, you got the ones that are already do it anyways because of, they like the software and stuff like that. But even, they're never going to take it seriously if there's nothing to benefit them from it. So they get their sponsors. The reason they did it last year and it worked so well is because obviously the COVID, but they also had sponsor obligations that they could at least show their paint schemes off and race and they get their name out there and just do things. I just think that we're never going to be taken. It's never going to be a serious thing because even you have last week for example when we released the stuff about Atlanta. Well, they used iRacing to visually show what happened to Atlanta, but everyone conceived it as iRacing's building the track for them and doing it, and iRacing did this and that. I mean, some of it was dispelled later on in the week that they weren't. They were basically, it's like when you go from a paper drawing for a paint job to a CAD drawing. When the CAD drawing started coming out, it was a lot easier. Well, it's a lot easier to see how a racetrack's going to look when you can virtually run on it compared to just showing it in a top-down view or drawings, right? So you're never going to it's never going to be a serious thing until there's some buy-in to it by the people that need to sell it.
That's a great idea, Greg. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. Why doesn't NASCAR have a Pro Invitational Series, but there's real NASCAR championship points on the line? How many points do they get for winning a stage? Let's say, okay, if you win the Pro Invitational race, you get the same points that you get for winning a stage. And all of a sudden, you know what? I think the drivers are going to be serious about it. I think the teams are going to be serious about it. I think the broadcasters are going to be serious about it because there's points on the line. And what better way to get NASCAR to, help get the fans to buy into and watch the eSIM stuff?
And well, they added every other type of race. We're racing on dirt now. We're racing so many road courses. Let's just make it part of the whole championship.
It's part of the championship, exactly. You have a 36-week schedule, but guess what? 4 weeks during the summer, you're going to run some eSIM, iRacing, and you're going to earn some points for that too.
I think the only way that would happen is if they would have to. They'd have to be on a level playing field rig-wise and set up everything-wise for hardware stuff because, the race car has to go through tech. Everything else should go through tech to make sure that they can participate in the event. So,
but a Joe Gibbs car and who's the guy that everybody basically wants out of the sport because he's just out there making laps? It's not Colleague. It's the guy that has the
Ware? Rick Ware?
Rick Ware, yeah. Rick Ware and Joe Gibbs are not in the same equipment. All right, so worried about checking. Not everybody's going to have Denny Hamlin's rig.
Okay, so Denny Hamlin can race in his rig, and then Rick Ware can race with the G20. Their teams can be a G27 with Windows 95 running it.
And more like a controller, right? A little
No.
controller with a steering wheel that moves the stick back and forth.
I mean, we're joking around here, but like the gist of all this is this is always still going to be like, we don't ever consider it a video game, but how much of the majority of the world that would watch NASCAR and participate in it, like in going to an event, when they watch it on TV, how much would call this a game over a sim like we would? Like if you're in it, you call it a sim, but anybody that watches it probably calls it a video game, and it's hard to be taken seriously that way.
I really think that they should try to promote the Coke series on TV more, because that is the real boys. Just like I've been on in the gym when there's like 5 different TVs on 5 different channels, and they will have these different online tournaments going on with like basically Final Fantasy style games on ESPN. So why not have the racing on there?
Well, I think that's... Oh, sorry, Brian. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's the real missed opportunity at this point, because while it's nice to have the name recognition of these professional drivers out there, you really want to sell the sport, and sell the action, sell the talent that some of these guys really have, and that's just not the way that the Pro Invitational approached this. They just wanted to sell the drivers and the sponsors, and that was it. They didn't really care what happened in the game or in the races. I mean, and that's kind of where this thing went south. Yeah. Is that when no one took it, no one was selling the racing, then the racing didn't matter, and that's where it kind of lost steam. And the longer it went, the more times that these drivers are in the middle of their season, they don't necessarily want to spend tons of time learning Chicago so they can be super good at this brand new track that they've never raced on. They don't have time for that. They're in the middle of their season. So I think they just missed the ball. I think the Coke series, they promoted it at the beginning of the year at Daytona, that the Coke series was the kickoff to Speed Week, for NASCAR. Yeah. That was what they
love that tone too.
That's the way they said that this week really started, was with the Coke series. Well, if you're going to put that much emphasis on the Coke series, why bury it, and not make it more presentable to normal race fans as opposed to diehards like us guys?
Problem there was, Brian, they can promote it all they want as the kickoff to the season, but if your announcer doesn't believe in the sim as a thing, right. If Mike Joy is there not believing in it, and I think Jeff Gordon was in that race, and that's the one I got a picture up here of him flipping into this thing, and Clint Boyer crashed. Like, there was nothing. It can be a kickoff to it, but if you all of a sudden look bad with it, it just didn't work.
Think about how upset any of us get when our NIS race goes bad. Especially if whether it's our own mistake or somebody else's. In either case, we're generally upset, right? And they roll into the wall and they're laughing. It turned into too much of a joke.
That's what I'm saying. Points on the line. Look, if I was Bill France Jr. in 2021, and I knew that we were having a Pro Invitational going into 2021 season, and I already know my schedule for the year because we've published it, and in the middle of August, they're going to have a 3 or 4 week gap for the Olympics in Tokyo. Well, you know what? Let's just bake into the points and the schedule some eSIM events on iRacing during the Olympics. Why not? And then show it online only if there's no room at the Peacock for us, because of the Olympics. They could just show it on YouTube Live or whatever, or show it on, NBCSN Live, streaming or whatever. But that would have been what I would have done. And then, like you said, put some points on it so everyone takes it seriously.
Now, I don't know if you guys have the equivalent of this, but I bought a streaming box. It's a Roku box is what I bought. But in it, it has a channel on it through a service that's in it that's just dedicated to esports. Like, it's just esports video game stuff being showed on the station 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You know, there is platforms that can be created to do some of this stuff where they could be put on just, you know, it's kind of like how we rotate through what the Motorsports network thing, right? So, you know, you got it on 3 or 4 times a week, and it airs then on something like that. But I think that's where a better place for the Coke series would be on it as well, right? Like on something like that.
Somewhere, right? Anywhere at this point, besides, you know, the iRacing YouTube.
Well, what you want at the beginning of a process where if you promote the Coke series is you want exposure as much as you can possibly get, because, you know, you want people to learn the names of some of these drivers and have an interest in following them, and that's where they can really start to build some momentum behind the Coke series.
And also, a lot of these Coke Series drivers probably are a little bit easier for some of those younger generation kids to relate to, right? Like, oh, he's not a super rich dude who grew up racing go karts from the age of 4. All right, so that's not necessarily the case with the Coke drivers compared to just about anybody who makes it to Cup level.
Yeah, you look at like a Casey Kerwin, you know, a young 20s, you know, with long hair and very relatable to the college age student, you know.
Well, I think we put a pretty good wrap on that. A little bow, nice long discussion. Let's jump into one of Mike's favorite things. Maybe I know you hated on Heat a lot, but Motorsports Games has confirmed a NASCAR 21. It was reported by IGN that they have confirmed the new NASCAR game will be ready for 2021, and it will not be a continuation of the Heat series. 21 is going to represent a fresh start for NASCAR simulations from Motorsports Games that will be powered by the Unreal Engine and Studio 397's acclaimed R-Factor 2 physics.
A big problem I have with all these, like, it's great that we have console gaming and stuff like this. I'm hoping that they get it out for March of 2020, or did they actually give a date? No, sorry, it doesn't actually give a date. It just says it'll be released in 2021, right?
Well, we're past halfway through now.
The problem with the problem with racing games I always found, and I guess a lot of it has to do with licensing rights and things changing through a season. But when you get like the football games, the soccer games, the baseball and hockey, they're all out right when the season, or in NBA, they're all out right when the season starts. A lot of the racing games come out halfway to the end of the year. So, you know, I'm hyped. Like, look at when we get to like have the off season, and then when Daytona hits and we're ready to get racing, we're hyped to get on the sim and just go at it and have all the stuff right from the beginning of the year. I find that the racing on console stuff comes out way too late, where you're in the lull of the summer, or late going back when kids are going back to school. The season's over, things are older. Like a lot of the season's over and things get old. Like even the F1 game, it's coming out. I think came out today. Well, they're already halfway through the F1 season. It kind of defeats the purpose of hyping it up, don't you think?
Yeah, and if they're putting this out this year, it's either going to the only good timing could be possibly when the playoffs start, or it's going to be right in the off season if they're aiming for the Christmas season.
But why would you put a game that's already out of date out? Because then what are you going to?
Are they even going to have next gen?
Well, the other thing is if it's coming out for this year and finishing off the cars that are for this year, okay, even if it comes out, say, 5 weeks before the end of the season, I think they're partnered with EA Sports still, are they not? Or EA. Well, EA likes to charge for a lot of their back, like, if you want these paint jobs or things like this. Why would you buy something that's already way out of date? Like, it's one thing to buy in, say, March and April when the season started and it's in full bloom, but why would you do it, at the end of the season when you should be going on and getting ready for the next one? Because all the football games are about to come out for right now when the football season starts, for the season coming up, because you want all the new player packs and things like that. It just seems like it's way too late for this.
Ultimately, I think probably the majority of our team, though, and probably the majority of our listeners aren't going to be buying this anyway. So
Nope.
It's good to get into that market anyway, just because it is a different market. It's going to sell to a different crowd. But ultimately, to the iRacer, the true comment is, who cares?
Well,
Okay.
hold on, sorry, Mike. The only reason I used to buy these games was because I wanted to race AI and not be, when I wasn't on the sim, I could race whenever I wanted to. And then I thought when iRacing got AI, I was going to be doing that more just to practice and stuff, and I haven't really done it. But I also stopped buying these games too.
So this ain't the only one. Earlier today, the same company announced IndyCar 2022, I think they call it, or something like that. But it's the same deal. It's R Factor with the Unreal Engine. It's going to be IndyCar. IndyCar's all in with it. And yeah, so I mean, we talked about business models earlier in the show. What's this business model?
Well, if you're gonna try, like, iRacing is its own thing, so it has, it focuses on a lot of different things to try and make up in a year. When you're making video games like this, it's a full year project to try and come up with a whole thing one at a time. So now are they taking that same staff that was going to make this game before they made this announcement and do it, and now split it in half to try and develop two games that are going to come out to try and double their market share? But are they going to be as good?
I think it's going to be definitely better than what we saw with Heat, because the R Factor 2 engine is at least more realistic than the Heat engine was. And a lot of the sports car community has actually enjoys R Factor 2, or a set of Corsa. It kind of bounces between the two of them.
I don't know if NASCAR, who's paying who in this situation. There's probably a profit sharing of the game itself.
Well, iRacing and NASCAR have never signed an actual fully licensed, like, they're not a licensed holder. They're partners, right? So that's why they can have a different, Heat can exist still and things like that, and that's why IndyCar can have their own thing. It's when you start licensing stuff, that's when you can't create your own, a separate thing, like, because that's what happened to Papyrus years ago too, when they kind of just got moved out of the market when EA took over.
Well, and iRacing's just really not concerned about the console market taking their customers away. It's a different level. Go ahead, Brian.
I think he froze.
Yeah, he's frozen.
The other thing I want to mention is, when I read the IndyCar stuff, it's not only that they're the publisher of the new console game, but they're also the esports ecosystem provider now for IndyCar. And so whatever that means, I take it as if they're going to run any official, events with their drivers, they're going to do it on the game.
Well, the thing is, too, is when they get a game like this, and they're obviously not doing the full laser scanning in the way that iRacing does and has a track. So when they create, like, St. Petersburg, the new Nashville track, some of the tracks that iRacing doesn't have, they can create these tracks, and that's why they could hold an esports thing with it, because they can license all the tracks so that they can have a full scheduled season. I mean, it's nice that they'll be able to do that. Whereas iRacing has select tracks that they've scanned over the years and just doesn't have them all. So that's probably why they're using it as an official esports, right?
It says, in addition to the new game, the IndyCar Series esports competition featuring potential driver participation and collaborations could begin as early as this year. Details will be announced at a later date.
I'll pick up this one because Brian is reconnecting from an internet connection. Yeah, he's frozen in the tundra up there. On the Twitter
he's
page,
back.
iRacing is asking members, what is your greatest iRacing achievement? Well, Mike, how about you? Is it Pocono?
I was thinking about this. I mean, when they put it up, how would I answer this question? It's hard. I mean, it's got to be one of my recent wins, maybe this year or even last year. But the one that stands out in my mind is the one that Greg did the video of where I beat David, or David helped me win at Talladega, or pushed me to the win. That's probably the one I would say, just because it's on the tip of my tongue.
We don't talk about this. We agreed.
Well, what about you guys? What's your best moment? Greatest achievement, it says.
I might go with the fact that mine's happening right now, that I'm sitting P4 in Division 1 of NIS. I would have never imagined getting up there. I mean, Garrett Maines could skip 4 races and still beat me, but and he almost won the race this morning or this afternoon. But it's still nice to be up there and no longer be a back marker in top split. I'm definitely mid pack and snagging some good finishes at this point.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, that's a tough one for me. I guess my favorite moment anyway was is winning at Talladega shortly after I joined Tifosi last year. So
yeah,
it was cool winning a race as a part of a team for the first time, because it's a whole different experience when you're winning for yourself, but when you're representing other racers in a team, like, I think it's actually makes it a little bit better than a typical win in NIS.
I think I was cheering you on or spotting you, if I remember right.
So yeah, I think it's going to be my top favorite moment.
Craig?
I was thinking about this. So it's saying the greatest achievement in iRacing. I want to say that, I have moments in iRacing that are great. I mean, like, we had the Daytona race this year, the 24 hours of Rolex race. That was a great achievement, getting, second place and enjoying the time that we had as a team there. But I want to, the achievement I feel from from iRacing is this show right here. Like, for me, it's to be part of this show. Having this platform for something that I find fun is, great as a hobby. If you told me, I don't know, what did I join the team 3 or 4 years ago? I've been part of iRacing for 10 years. If you would have told me that I was, publicly talking and speaking on a broadcast in front of a camera to, a couple thousand people, that listen to us as a podcast, I would have told you crazy. And at one point, I haven't streamed in a while, but if I would have told you I was a streamer too, I would have laughed at that too. It's just not, those are more of an achievement for me with all this stuff than any of the stuff on track.
Yeah, that's a great point for all of us, not just you, that are involved with the show, because it's great to have a voice, to be able to talk about it, and people are listening to what we have to say. So I love it too.
That's pretty impressive, Greg, that you picked that over a professional racer saying, follow this guy and see how he's doing it. Do it that way.
But, I'm serious though. For me, this, every Thursday I make sure I'm home for work to be able to be on a show that's about a hobby. What does that tell you about where is it a priority? Yeah, it's priority, but what does it tell you what what's come down to? It's like, if I would have told, like I said, if I would have told you years ago that I'd be doing that, if you would have told me that years ago doing this, I would have laughed at you. I would have said that I wouldn't be rushing home from work to do it. It's, I listened to the podcast, and when I started talking to Mike and got on the team, I thought I was never going to be part of this broadcast, but now look, I've even created the broadcast part of it, right?
Yeah, looking at some of the replies to the original tweet, I've been scrolling through them. A lot of people talk about, hey, I got to race with Kyle Busch last year at Talladega and almost won, or I beat Max Verstappen in a heads-up, race. To be able to say that, and to be able to race a world champion like that, and to beat him on the, that's awesome. So some of these people, they do have some pretty awesome moments. Pretty incredible to read.
Getting to team up with, former IndyCar driver Richie Hearn on multiple occasions. He's probably going to be running with us in Spa. That's really neat.
Racing with Sadlers.
Yeah, passing, actually being able to pass Sadler occasionally and then have him pass me back 10 laps later. All right. Those are all fun. He definitely, once he started off a little bit easier to pass, but he started to catch on really quick, as I'm sure Garrett coached him up on exactly the nuances. And I mean, he was a super talented driver anyway, so it was just a matter of getting used to the new vernacular, I guess.
Yeah, racing with the Sadlers was definitely a treat for me.
Hadn't seen him on much lately. I was talking to Garrett, actually, or no, Jason. I was talking to Jason just yesterday, and they are currently coaching baseball. And you might actually be seeing the little Sadler in the major someday. Who knows?
They always go big, no matter what they're doing. They're going to do it big. Greg, steering ratio is now what?
Yeah, so Steve Rada brought it up in the forums. I guess he was trying to find out. He was curious what the new pinion steering ratio, like I guess it's a pinion gear, is in compared to what we used to have in steering ratio when it was like 12-1, 14-1, 60-1. So staff member Matt Holden replied that the next gen car uses a completely different steering system other than all the other cars. It's a steering pinion controls the steering speed instead of the power steering box. Like Vern said, it doesn't correlate directly to the steering box ratio. Higher pin numbers produce more movement for a given steering input and would be like running a lower ratio, faster steering box. So it's good information, and it's going to be really hard. There is guides out there about figuring out kind of what it translates to, but you're never going to get the same. We all jump into a race and go, I'm running 16-1 or 12-10. We all know what we're running there. It's going to be a new learning curve for us, right?
You'll have to find your sweet spot, but it just goes in the opposite direction now. And that's interesting because the steering ratio back in the R Factor days went in the opposite direction. The lower number was slower.
It's interesting, yeah, because, we think about this new car, we're all NASCAR drivers, but we get in, you're going to have this new steering system, and it's like totally foreign. I've never seen anything like it, but this is good to know that, the numbers kind of go opposite the way they normally do.
It's basically like you're basically now at a gear ratio kind of amount now instead of an actual whatever, it's a different way of looking at it, I guess, is what they're saying.
And what's funny is some of the commenters in the forum are basically asking the staff member, can't you just make it feel better for us? Because it feels really crappy. And I'm paraphrasing. Andy, and I'm also going to paraphrase the staff member's response. He basically says, no, we're not going to change it because this is how NASCAR designed it and wants it. So we're doing what NASCAR wants.
Well, we've never done that in any other car in here. It's like, well, I don't want this car to drive this way. Please change it. iRacing doesn't do it that way. So why are we doing it now? It's still not a. It's
IRO1, right? It's not the fantasy car.
It's still a work in progress. Obviously, we're still finding out a lot of stuff that's going on with this car, and this car still has a lot of development to go with it, and it's going to be an ever-changing product on iRacing.
Well, I think the next big test for this car will be the July 27th Coke race, which will be the non-points event at Nashville. And to see those boys run that car, just to see how the racing goes, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Good choice of a track to try it, though, because that was the track that was, I think it was probably one of the better tracks that we've raced on this year because of having to use brakes and stuff like that at that track. So hopefully it runs good there. I haven't tried it on that track.
Okay, we got a Season 3 Patch 3 release notes. That was today. A couple minor things, looks like UI, a couple little fixes. I'm not going to mention time attack. The qualifying conduct scrutiny is now in effect for time attack competitions. And apparently there was a problem if you had a 0x from a wall contact, it will now correctly invalidate that lap time.
Is there
issue where smoke was a little too bright in mirrors?
One thing I noticed here, they changed the billboards for Atlanta. It's obviously a week too late. Is there an event for Coasters coming up at Atlanta or no? It's odd that they're doing that after the week that we raced at Atlanta.
Admin commands Lucky Dog decision will now also ignore drivers with EOL penalties. I think I've experienced this problem on Wednesday night because I got the Lucky Dog twice and I couldn't pit. Even though the pit would open for me, there were still cars I had to let by. I had to let everybody by. Everybody was coming out of pits after repairs, and I just couldn't pit because there was always a car to let by. So I think maybe this fixes that, I hope.
Well, it may have broken something else. Is that on the script? Are we talking about that?
It isn't. So go ahead and tell them about that.
Well, right now, there's a hot fix coming out in the morning, and I've spoken to iRacing staff. They know about it, and that's probably what the hot fix is for. But right now, if you get an EOL at any point, including for being the lucky dog, you're stuck with that EOL for every caution following. So right now, anybody that sped or had an unsafe exit or anything, they're having to go to the back every single caution. And so once you've got an EOL, your race is basically ruined right now. It started with this patch. So it's been going on since Tuesday, I guess. That was the patch day, or was it Wednesday morning? Whenever the patch came out, that's what happened, and I bet you it's related to this change they tried to make with the lucky dog. And the thing with the lucky dog is especially if you're really far back in the lucky dog and you don't get around quick enough, yeah, it'll start and it'll give you the EOL before you can get in the pits, and then you can't pit. I've sent that in before too. We found a lot of people have figured out what to do to kind of work around that. What you do is you sneak up and you just pull up by the leader before it tells you to go ahead and pass the pace car, and you go when you get to the line, and that way you're able to pit before you get to the two to go, and it sticks you at the back.
Okay. Should make racing interesting before that patch comes out.
If that wraps all we've got on the patch, let's talk the 2022 Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Cup. And basically, they're going to be doing something similar to how the current Road to Pro series is working. Starting on July 31st, the qualifying series for 2022 Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup gets underway with this new qualification format that is open to all iRacing members. The virtual Porsche 911 GT3 Cup serves as the digital racing car for this series and is once again signed as the title sponsor. So there's going to be a qualifying series. I'm not going to read every race, but there are 6 races. And then there's a contender series.
Now, the 6 races are open to everybody, anybody on iRacing. You can run these races.
I think we should try them, David.
Maybe. I'm
Do it just for fun, to see where you shake out. Yeah.
I'm just
See what split you.
I'm really hobby on the road courses. So unless it's the LMP1, for some reason it suits me, but the other stuff I'm just kind of hobby.
Is this the old Cup car, or is this their new Porsche that they've got? This is not the new GT3, is it?
I think it is, isn't it?
I didn't think the new one had the Cup's name on it.
Yeah.
It starts 2 weeks from now. I mean, not a lot of notice, and some of the people in the forums were saying that. But I noticed when iRacing put this up, they didn't post anything but a link to the Porsche website, and all the details are actually at Porsche.de.
Well, the road guys that are up there, you know, in 5, 6, 7, 8K, they'll definitely be the ones that are probably qualifying for the contender series, just like it is in Road to Pro. But it's that same format. You got the open races. You got to get through that to get into the contender series, and then there will be the contender series. But instead of having to get to the Pro series, I think the contender series will jump straight to the Porsche Cup.
And they're going to broadcast the contender series as well.
So from what I'm seeing here, that's the old car. That's the old Cup car still. They're using what they had last time. Because the new one has the R at the end of it. It's a GT3R.
So it's the top 15 of the first round get mixed in with the people from last year's results, 21 through 40. So the people that didn't make the top 20 in the championship, they get relegated into this contender series to fight the top 15 of everybody else who ran those 6 races.
So the contender series is actually the formerly known as Pro Series.
Right. So it's a little different than the NASCAR version, but I like it. And if you want to be involved, you need to get out and run those 6 events.
Brian, I can just cut this part out. We've basically already covered the next article, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll cut that out in post. So, this next one, it's kind of funny. I got into a little bit of an argument with a couple of people today because I will call people out on their stuff when they mess up, and especially if it affects me. But I will call myself out too when I do something. And kind of as proof of that, I submitted myself for the not top 10, and I don't know if I made the not top 10er yet, but I made the iRacing Instagram post today because I basically drove into the pit wall at Pocono.
Like the barrels?
I was following somebody else into the pits. All right. And I'm focusing on not running into him and not speeding, right? So I'm just staying right behind him because you're supposed to be single file. I'm staying right behind him, but he's not actually in the right lane. He's a whole car width right of the right lane. And I'm not particularly aware of this. And all of a sudden, he jerks to the left, and all of a sudden, oh shit, there's a wall, and I'm dead.
Yeah, the Pocono pit entry there, it kind of funnels down to 2 lanes, I think, from like 3 or 4. And yeah, if you're not paying attention, I've actually done the same thing. The other thing, David, notice in the text of the Instagram, you're actually known as member David Ha.
Yeah, that's an interesting title.
Ha ha ha!
Yeah. There's too many different directions you can go to that.
Your name is now David Ha. You are not living that down, ha ha.
Yeah. We'll stick with that direction. That one's pretty acceptable. Yeah, and it's interesting. Some people, both on Discord and occasional chats and on the Instagram post, actually think this guy did this on purpose. And I was in there with him, and we were racing around each other clean the whole time. I know he didn't do it on purpose because he basically almost hit it himself too. We were both focused on our speed more than which lane we were in.
And that happens a lot there.
When you pull on pit, right? Yeah, when you pull on, that's what I'm looking at is the speed. I'm not looking at the road.
What's the other track? Darlington has it on the inside, doesn't it? I think it's Darlington that has the one on the inside. You got to be careful at.
Yep.
I wish they'd do that at almost every track, so the people would stop that like to drive down all the pits would get wrecked out.
No, we're gonna get rid of ghosting for that.
All right, Mike, it's time to do some cleaning.
Podcast housekeeping notes. Don't forget the Aftermath podcast. Go get it, guys. It's a separate feed from us. Our new website, iRacersLounge.com. It's actually not new. We're going into our 7th month of the website. It's actually working out really well. I hope you guys use it as a resource. It's great. Shout out to a couple teammates. First friend, Joe Owen, got some emergency heart surgery from a heart attack that he didn't expect. And so sorry to hear him going through that. He did get his surgery and looks like everything's going to be fine with Joe. And then other teammate Steve Llewellyn got in a horrible car accident this morning. He's a wrestling coach, and he had some of his students with him in his truck, and he got in a head-on collision. We just saw the pictures a few minutes ago here on the chat, and man, he's lucky that he survived. He did get some injuries for him. Looks like he's going to be okay, though, and he said the kids were fine.
It's been a pretty bad 7 days for, in general for a lot of our chat. We've had some, even you had in the last 7. Isn't it yours part of the last week too, Mike?
Yep. My daughter got in a bad car accident. She's 24, and she broke her femur, her ankle, and her wrist. And she's been living in my house the last several days, and I've been babysitting her baby basically 24 hours a day since. So, yeah, my life's been turned upside down. This morning, Steve was upset about the announcement about Matthew D. Burrito losing his job.
And I think Tony is, definitely sobbing because of it, too. I think Tony is really not liking it.
So, tough day. Don't forget, we're on Performance Motorsports Network. I touched base with those guys last week. They're still putting our show up, guys, and so go check it out over there. They have all kinds of motorsports shows. Fantasy.
All right, guys. So, coming off of Atlanta, coming in first place is still Resdog. Resdog's number 1, Justin Times in second place. Oh Baby 44 is in third. So it looks like Greg has jumped up to number 7, passing Tony Groves, who is in 8th place. Chris Scales, Jedi McFly is in 10th. Let's see, Steve Llewellyn's in 15th. Tony the Tiger. That's Tony Rochette's in 17th place. I'm jumping up to 24th. I'm making a late charge. I don't think I'm going to be able to get much further than that. I still have a lot of people that I haven't used. Tyler Williamson, Fat Boy 1990 is in 20th place. So yeah, it looks like Greg is the leader of the Tifosi part of our fantasy league at this point, but it's neck and neck right now with him and Tony Groves.
Yeah, Greg finished 5th if you look at Atlanta specifically. Smiling Ninja was first.
That would be...
Tyler was 7th. Tony 9th.
It's pretty amazing to see how crowds change, because it was a really popular win at the track, right?
Everybody wanted to see Kurt. For some reason, Kurt Busch has done a full circle in his career, right? Like,
Yeah, definitely.
he was such a bad boy to start off his career. He won a championship, not being any favorite, and now everybody roots for him to get a win every year and do good, and then, even move. We're all talking about he could be the next. He could drive for Michael Jordan's team and Denny Hamlin's team. Like, these opportunities he's made for himself because he's reinvented himself.
I have no problem plugging them. Door Bumper Clear basically all but hinted that that's going to be the case.
He can't say it. They're really good at hinting things that are actually true.
They didn't try to hide it at all.
No.
I think this is the first week where I think Hendrick probably didn't get the bonus points for being top manufacturer, right, or top team. They didn't have their typical dominant day.
Well, rumor has it NASCAR found out what they were doing. They found their gray area.
From all the Chevys, they took something away, but it didn't look like it affected Ganassi as much.
There was
I didn't hear that. Interesting.
There was something on the front end that they finally caught on to it and took away the advantage. So, they were innovating, and then that's how it works. They find something, and then NASCAR finds out what they found and says, no, don't do that anymore. So that's the arms race that will always be motorsports, basically. Okay, it's time to jump into hardware. First thing we're looking at is the Simrigs Exodus Max Sim Racing Cockpit. And it's a standard 80/20 rig. This one's a sturdy one. It's got the full adjustability. I definitely like the black color. Pretty high price. I hope that includes the seat, because I'm looking at $1,400.
No seat, but it is New Zealand of all places, and so if you live in New Zealand, this is a source for you. I don't know if that's a good price or not. I mean, from a European or American standpoint, it's pretty high.
Well, if that is New Zealand dollars, it could convert in a completely different way. But in the U.S. dollars, that's almost double a P1X.
And then you have to ship it too if you're going to do that.
It's very sturdy looking. I mean, they double up on the 80/20.
It's got the same heavy duty, at least what thickness or the dimension, the widest dimension is the same as the P1X design.
Right. I would call it a P1X clone almost.
The only thing they don't have is the upgraded pedal design.
Yeah, I will say that's as far as 80/20 goes, this is looks very solid. The really thick bottom base, the thick uprights for the steering mount. So now I just did a quick check. If this is New Zealand currency, that would be just under $1,000 in American dollars.
It's got
not so bad.
It has to be New Zealand because it's only showing that you can only ship it in New Zealand. It doesn't look like you can ship it anywhere else.
I see.
All right, well, all the Kiwis can go there for the rig.
All the hobbits.
They're actually, the Aussies particularly like to call them Kiwis, and they call themselves Kiwis. So, more pedals, Brian?
Yeah, the Bill race continues. This one is Racework pedals. So they've been in 2 years of development. Racework unveils their latest revision of their S1 pedals, which were designed, machined, and built in-house at Wittlich, Germany at racework.com. So they, because of that, they have full quality control over the entire process. These guys start at €840, excluding VAT. As a limited time offer price, so it's not going to be the set price. At some point, they're going to probably go back up again. So, but they're saying that they're confident that these are the smoothest pedals on the market. It still has the Tilton 8078 Endurance Racing master cylinders. So, if you want to grab them, grab them quick while you can. There's 2 and 3 pedal variants, so you can get the clutch pedal added separately. And black is in stock, and they will be getting a limited quantity of Racework orange colored pedals. They're coming in about 2 weeks, which from the picture we have of the Racework orange with the black pedal pads, and it looks really sharp. It's a very nice looking design.
If they want to send me to them, I'll compare them to the sim coaches gladly, which I'm absolutely loving how they. No, but these look like they'll be the very solid design. There's a lot of similarities in the design. I see the hydraulic pedal design totally differently now that I understand how it works, and this is very similar. What I particularly like about this is the full length gas pedal, which is pretty realistic, and your clutch and brake pedal look like kind of more real clutch and brake pedals as well. It's pretty neat design, and the pedals are all separate units, so when you set up your base plate, you can probably easily customize where they will land.
And so I'm liking them too. I think the price is right for hydraulic pedals. Now there's no base plate, but $800 and something. Yeah, that's about right.